Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today to commemorate the observance of Four Chaplains Day. Each February 3rd, this day of remembrance is celebrated across our nation and our Commonwealth. Rabbi Alexander Good, a Jewish rabbi, Reverend George Fox, a Methodist minister, Reverend Clark Pauling, a Dutch Reformed minister, and Father John Washington, a Catholic priest, the Four Chaplains. The four newly minted first lieutenants who met at the Army Chaplain School at Harvard University, where they prepared for assignments in the European theater and set sail on the USAT Dorchester to report to their new assignments. They boarded the Dorchester on January 23, 1943, in the port of New York with 900 others as part of a 3-ship transport convoy headed to an army base in Greenland, set to traverse the frigid North Atlantic waters through the infamous Torpedo Junction. In the midst of hundreds of young, frightened soldiers packed head to toe below deck were the four Army chaplains who cast aside their own fears to minister to the needs of others. Differences among the troops ceased to be important when all shared the same level of fear and uncertainty, whether Protestant, Catholic, or Jewish. The titles of rabbi, father, and reverend were quickly replaced with chaplain. For it is said that when sinking in the quicksand of life, one does not ask the credentials of him who offers the hand of hope. He simply thanks God that the helping hand is there. On February 2nd, the Dorchester was within 150 miles of Greenland when sonar indicated the presence of an enemy submarine in Torpedo Junction. Captain Hans Danielson, concerned for the human lives on board his ship, hoped that they could make it through the night because with daylight air cover, they could make it safely to port. Many would not live to see that daylight. In the early hours of February 3rd, the Dorchester was torpedoed by the German submarine U-223 off Newfoundland in the North Atlantic. The torpedo strike instantly killed 100 men in the hull of the ship. An explosion in the engine room blanketed the ship in darkness. The bitter, cold waters of the Atlantic rushed into the hull, and the ship began to sink rapidly. The wounded cried in pain, and the survivors struggled to find the exits and the life jackets necessary to survive. In the utter chaos, four calm voices spoke words of comfort and brought order to the evacuation efforts. On the 70th anniversary of the sinking of the Dorchester, survivor Petty Officer John Maloney recounted that he was reeling from the cold. He headed back towards his cabin when Rabbi Good called out to him and asked him, "Where are you going?" And he replied, "To get my gloves." "Here, take these," said Rabbi Good, as he handed a pair of gloves to the young officer who would never have survived the trip back to his cabin. The petty officer replied, "I can't take those gloves." "Never mind," the rabbi responded. "I have 2 pairs. Mahoney slipped the gloves over his hands and returned to the frigid deck, never stopping to ponder until later, when he had reached safety, that there was no way Rabbi Good would have been carrying a spare set of gloves. Only later, he came to a new understanding of what was transpiring in the mind of the fearless chaplain. Somehow, Rabbi Good suspected that he himself would never leave the Dorchester alive. Rabbi Good, Reverend Fox, Reverend Pauling, and Father Washington not only comforted the wounded, and the dying with the word of God, they valiantly succeeded in getting many of the soldiers out onto the deck of the sinking vessel. With calm strength and organization, the chaplains directed men to the safety of lifeboats. In less than 20 minutes, the Dorchester was almost gone. The chaplains continued to pass out life jackets until they realized that the lockers were all empty and the life jackets were all gone. It was then that these four men of God did something that would never be forgotten. Together, they sacrificed their own hope of survival for men who were almost total strangers. It is written that greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. The chaplains took off their jackets, they gave them to others, and time ran out. The chaplains had done all that they could for those who would survive. The soldiers that reached the lifeboat shared that as they heard the ship sink below the waters, above it all were the voices of the four chaplains. Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. The four chaplains stood together, arm in arm, Rabbi Good, Reverend Fox, Reverend Pauling, and Father Washington. In a tribute, one of the 230 survivors said, "It was the finest thing I have ever seen this side of heaven." On December 19, 1944, all four chaplains were posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and the Distinguished Service Cross. Congress wished to confer the Medal of Honor, but was blocked by the stringent requirements which required heroism performed under fire. So a posthumous special medal for heroism, the Four Chaplains Medal, was authorized by Congress and awarded by the President on January 18, 1961. This medal was never given before and has never been given since. In York, we find strength in the legacy of the four chaplains and of Rabbi Alexander David Good, who left the pulpit at Temple Beth Israel in 1942 to become an Army chaplain. Each year, we gather at the Four Chaplains Memorial of York County's annual breakfast to commemorate and honor the service and sacrifice of the four chaplains. Local leaders who live their lives by the values of the four chaplains are recognized by scholarships awarded to students from Alexander D. Good Elementary School to help them pursue an education, a strong foundation for a life in which they can give of themselves for the betterment of others. Today, I thank the Senate of Pennsylvania for the opportunity to remember the four chaplains, their service, their sacrifice, and their legacy. Thank you, Mr. President.